Story 1. The House That Ate the Sky. If you hear a second heartbeat in your house, it's already too late. The day the letter came, the sky over my apartment had been the same flat gray for weeks. I was halfway through a microwave dinner when I saw the envelope. Thick, cream-colored, my name written in precise black ink. The return address was from a law firm I'd never heard of. Inside, Mr. Carter Ellison, you are the sole inheritor of the estate of your late uncle, Douglas Ellison. I barely remembered the man. He was the uncle who never came to Christmas, the one my father called a recluse with a streak of madness. I'd seen him twice, once when I was 6 and once at my father's funeral. The letter included an address. No city, just a county I'd never heard of in the rural Midwest. A key, heavy and old, was taped to the bottom of the page. I almost threw it away. But the next morning, I called in sick and drove 5 hours into a part of the state where the roads became little more than cracked ribbons through empty farmland. The GPS failed 20 minutes from the address. I followed the handwritten directions in the letter. Take the gravel road, past the black silo. Continue until the sky bends. I thought it was a metaphor, until I saw it. The horizon over the house looked wrong. Not storm clouds, not fog. It was like the dome of the sky had been dented inward, sagging directly over the roof. The light around it subtly warped, like heat shimmer in winter air. The house was a 2-story farmhouse, the paint so peeled it looked like a scab half pulled. The porch sagged. The windows were blind with dust. Inside, the air smelled faintly sweet, like rotting fruit left in a closed car. There was furniture, but all of it was covered with dusty sheets. I decided to stay one night. I'd figure out later if it was worth fixing or selling. At sunset, the light through the warped horizon dimmed too quickly, like someone had twisted a dimmer switch on the entire world. Around midnight, I woke to tapping in the ceiling. Not the random scuttle of a mouse, deliberate, slow, almost polite. Tap, tap, tap. It came from directly above my bed. I told myself it was old wood contracting. But then the sound shifted, as if whatever was making it had started crawling toward the door, on all fours. In the morning, the yard looked smaller. The horizon had moved. It was subtle, but I swear the old oak tree that stood 50 feet from the porch was now only 30. The world beyond the house seemed to be closing in. The mail slot in the front door clattered. I hadn't given anyone my address. Inside was a folded scrap of newspaper dated 20 years ago. The headline read, "Local family vanishes. Farmhouse empty." The photo was of this house. On the 3rd night, a noise woke me. It was the window in the upstairs hall, squeaking as though its frame were shifting. When I looked, the window was gone. In its place was bare wall. I backed up, heart hammering, and tripped over a floorboard. When I looked up again, the window was there, but on a different wall. And it was fogged from the inside. I stepped closer. Something pressed against the glass from the other side, like a human hand. Then another. Then a face, pale and blurred, breathing against it. The 5th day, but horizon was only yards from the porch. Beyond it, nothing, just black. Inside, the house felt expectant. The walls bulged faintly, like a slow inhale. That night, I heard the tapping again, but this time it was under the floor. The ceiling in the hall began to bow downward, plaster cracking, dust falling like snow. I ran for the door, but it was no longer there, only more wall. The ceiling split, Beams like ribs, wet and gleaming, yawned open. Something warm and wet wrapped around my waist. The last thing I saw was the sky folding inward like paper, and then there was only dark. A morning after the ceiling tried to swallow me, I woke on the floor of the kitchen. No wounds, no broken bones, but my clothes were damp, as though I'd been lying in dew. The kitchen table had something on it that hadn't been there before, a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked with age. The first page read, Douglas Ellison, 1973. The entry started normal. Weather notes, crop yields. Then, August 12th, notice the sky again. It's closer this year. I've measured the horizon. We're losing an inch every night. September 2, the windows moved again. They follow me now. The walls have begun breathing in the east wing. September 10, something in the ceiling whispered my name while I slept, said it was hungry. September 14, I am not alone here. The house is not built on the earth. The earth is built inside the house. The last entry, if you hear the tapping, don't move. If you move, it will find you. And if it finds you, it will feed. That night, I tested the journal's claim. I placed a chair exactly 10 feet from the porch railing, marked the spot with a rock. In the morning, the chair was 5 feet away. The rock was gone. The fields beyond the house were just gone. Not destroyed, not empty, just missing, as if they'd never existed. The sky above was no longer blue. It was the sick color of bruised skin. The tapping came again at midnight. This time it was faster, more impatient. I held still, remembering my uncle's warning, but the sound began circling the room, faster and faster, until it was inside the room. The wallpaper bulged, the floral pattern stretching over something that shifted beneath it, pressing outward like a head straining through plastic. A whisper came from inside the wall, not words, just the sound of breathing, but in reverse, like someone inhaling me. I tried the windows. Every one opened onto the same view, the kitchen. I smashed one with a chair. The glass reformed instantly, sealing without a seam. The front door was gone again. In its place was a window, and in that window was me. Except, not quite. My reflection smiled, though I didn't. Its mouth opened wider and wider until its jaw cracked. On the 7th day, the sky touched the roof. Everything beyond the property was pitch black. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. The walls pulsed steadily, like the heartbeat of some buried giant. When the tapping started, it was everywhere at once. The floor beneath me split like wet paper. I fell into a space that should have been the basement, but was instead an endless fleshy tunnel lined with ribs. Something enormous moved in the dark ahead. And I realized the tunnel wasn't a hallway. It was a throat. I tried to scream, but the air was pulled from my lungs as the darkness rushed forward. And then, silence. Story 2. Room 6 doesn't exist. Room 6 was never built. So why is someone in there? The rain had been chasing me since noon, a black wall in the rear-view mirror that seemed to get taller the farther I drove. By the time the gas gauge hit empty, the storm was almost on top of me. I pulled into the only sign of life for miles, a roadside motel whose flickering neon read "Hotel." The M had died long ago. The man at the front desk looked like he'd been there since the 70s, skin yellowed by nicotine, eyes the color of dishwater. "Only got a couple rooms left," he said, sliding a key toward me. It was brass, stamped with the number 5. I glanced at the room list on the wall. The numbers went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. No 6? I asked. He didn't look up. Room 6 doesn't exist. The motel was shaped like a horseshoe, the office at the center. My room was on the right wing. Between room 5 and room 7 was a blank stretch of wall, just enough space for another door. That night, the rain didn't let up. Around midnight, I woke to a faint, deliberate knocking. 3 slow knocks. It was coming from the wall where room 6 should have been. I pressed my ear to the plaster. A whisper slid through it, almost too soft to hear. Let me in. The next morning, I stepped outside and stopped cold. Where there had been only wall, there was now a door. Faded red paint, brass numbers nailed crookedly. 6. I looked toward the office. The desk clerk was watching me through the window, unmoving. He shook his head slowly. I ignored him. The door was warm when I touched it. The knob turned easily. Inside was not a motel room. It was a hallway, stretching far beyond the dimensions of the building. The carpet was the same faded pattern, but the air was colder and smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic. Every 30 feet was another door, all marked 6. The second door I opened led into a room from another era. Rotary phone, black and white TV, an ashtray still warm. On the bed sat a man in a brown suit, staring at the wall. When I said hello, he turned slowly. His eyes were solid black. Further in, I found more of them, guests in outdated clothes, some from decades past, some barefoot, all whispering under their breath. None acknowledged me directly, but every few steps, I'd see one glance up sharply, as though listening for something I couldn't hear. One woman, hair matted with dust, grabbed my wrist as I passed. Her grip was cold as ice. "Don't answer it," she hissed. "Answer what?" I asked. Her eyes darted to the ceiling. "You'll know." It started as I turned another corner. 3 slow knocks. This time it was above me, from the ceiling tiles, then from the floor beneath my feet. The hallway tilted slightly, making me stumble. The carpet squelched under my shoes, damp as though something had seeped up from below. I don't know how long I walked before I reached the final door. Unlike the others, this one was black, its brass number freshly polished. When I opened it, there was nothing, just a black void that felt alive. My breath steamed in front of me, though the air wasn't cold. From the darkness came the knocking. This time, it was inside my chest, shaking my ribs. I woke in my car, engine off, rain still pounding the windshield. The motel was gone, just an empty lot. In my pocket was a brass key. Stamped on it, 6. That night, in my apartment, the knocking started again, from the wall behind my bed. Story 3. Harvest of Glass. They grew glass in the fields and fed it to us. The first glass stalks appeared overnight. At dawn, the fields shimmered as if covered in frost. But when we walked out to inspect them, we saw they were 3 feet tall, crystal clear, and sharp enough to slice skin. Inside each stalk was a faint image, faces, not ours, strangers. Old Man Rudd was the first to touch one. He pressed his palm to it and hissed, jerking back. Blood ran down his wrist from a thin, perfect cut. The next day, he was gone. In his place, working the same field, was someone who looked exactly like him, but didn't speak, didn't eat, and whose reflection in the barn's window grinned constantly. Soon, other villagers began to notice strange things. In mirrors, their reflections moved slightly out of sync. Sometimes they were smiling when the real person wasn't. At night, faint cracking sounds came from the fields, as though ice was splintering. It happened on the first moonless night. The stalks all shattered at once, the sound carrying for miles. From the shards rose figures made entirely of glass, jointed like humans, but razor-edged. They moved silently toward the village. By morning, half the town had been replaced. The copies behaved normally enough, except for the eyes, too still, too reflective. And when they passed a mirror, the image inside would look directly at whoever was watching. I stayed barricaded in my home, every mirror smashed, windows boarded. Near midnight, I glanced at a puddle in the corner of the floor and froze. My reflection was grinning, teeth sharp as shards. It raised a hand in greeting. I didn't. When I looked down at my arm, a hairline crack was spreading across the skin, light glinting from beneath. Something inside me was growing, pushing outward. I tried to scream, but my throat made the sound of breaking crystal.